followed by that will be a moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will have the reading of the notice, please.
The educational and annual meeting of the budget hearing of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, composed of 38 members, will convene at the Marathon County Courthouse, Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, on Tuesday, November 13, 2018, at 8 p.m. to consider the items as were listed on the agenda, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. I would like to request everyone please silence their cell phones and any other electronic devices, please, as to not interrupt the meeting. And we will proceed to roll call. I would request that all supervisors please sign in. And we will proceed. And I would like to welcome all the visitors that we have here with us this evening, and I would also welcome all of the viewing audience. If you would allow me, I would like to take this moment to ask anybody in the viewing audience and any supervisors that are veterans to please stand and be recognized, and thank you for your service. So if there is any veterans well, I would like to let's give them a round of applause. I know it's after Veterans Day, but it's still Veterans Week. So let's recognize the veterans and thank them for the service that they've provided to the country. And we will move on to item number 7, 15-minute public comment. And nobody had approached to address the public comment. And we will get to the public hearing on the budget a little later, and anybody can address the board at that time on the budget. So we'll move on to item B, education discussion regarding agenda items for the Thursday, November 15th, 2018 meeting. And we have item number 8B8, claims, Tristan Martin. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item under 9 ordinances, under 9A, Town of Marathon rezone, Timothy Rose for Donald L. Lemke Trust. Ordinance 30-18. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move to item 9B. Town of Knowlton, rezone, Tim Vreeland on behalf for Matt Mullins, ordinance 31-18. Any discussion? Okay. Item 9C, from the Town of Wien, rezone, Tim Vreeland for Adam Hornke, ordinance 32-18. Any discussion? All right, moving on to resolutions. Item number 10, from the Health and Human Services Committee, A, requesting increased funding and oversight reforms for Wisconsin Child Protective Services Systems. Resolution 54-18. Supervisor Boots.
There will be a slight adjustment to that. We're going to basically say to the governor, not to Scott Walker, and then also we're going to put in from Marathon County and WCA. That would be it.
Okay. Supervisor Gums.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, but in the Hornkey rezone, the first name is missing in the first page.
In which one?
The Hornkey, Town of Wayne, correct? We'll have that corrected for Tuesday. Thank you. Any other discussion? In questions under number 10A, resolutions, Health and Human Services Committee? Okay, from the Infrastructure Committee, item 10B-A, opposing increases in truck size and weight, resolution 55-18. Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can somebody tell me how other states, are we going to be in compliance with what other states are doing? Or are we kind of a standalone on restricting?
Supervisor Robinson?
The resolution is before us because the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks approached the county and asked us to take this position. There are efforts on a national basis to try to get a pilot project to increase the weight from 80,000 pounds to 91,000 and increase the double bottom or the tandem trucks to 35 feet, which pose safety concerns as well as maintenance concerns. And so we're basically restating our position that we have concerns. It's a position that most police departments have advocated, the State Patrol, Wisconsin counties, the county highway commissioners, and others in opposing increasing the weights. We haven't redesigned our roads to take on additional weight. So every time those bigger semis get on the road, it shortens the life of the roads, which is one of the reasons why we're taking the position. And as Matt indicated, we'll be making some minor edits to this as well to reflect the changes in the gubernatorial or the governor.
Okay, Supervisor Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this only for our county roads? Because they run interstates legally now, don't they?
No, there is discussion about allowing on a national level pilot projects for 10 to 15 years to increase the weight and the length. And they're looking at potentially up to 10 states to be part of that pilot project. And they really haven't developed a methodology by which they'll study it. But it applies to interstates, and the concern is that it will not only impact the interstates, but also the state highways as well as the local roads.
But correct me if I'm not wrong, John, isn't there a overweight permit in the winter system for forest products on the interstate?
There are, and there are also exemptions for certain agricultural vehicles.
Yep.
No fee, so this doesn't change that.
Correct. Okay. Any other discussion on that resolution? Okay. Item number 10C, Finance Property Facilities Committee. A, resolution amending the 2018 capital improvement budget and the 2018 through 2022 capital improvement program to fund courthouse sheriff SIU remodel and equipment transfer $328,000 from the 2018 contingency fund. Resolution 56-18. Any discussion, any questions? Supervisor Johnson.
Mr. Chair, I guess I have, and I spoke briefly with Sheriff Parks on the way in. I guess I questioned large amount for a remodel, office remodel, at a time when the sheriff's department is also in need of additional dispatchers to open up that other channel and to be able to staff it adequately. So I guess my question is whether the office remodel is that much of a priority when we have other needs in the department.
Well, I'd invite the sheriff or any of his designees to explain what the remodel, the opportunities that will be afforded the county due to the proposed remodel and what it all entails as far as our partners in the federal agencies. And so, Scott, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this entails is we were approached by the federal government, by the FBI, by an agent who's now assigned to the Marathon County, central Wisconsin area. This agent used to work out in the California area where he would run task force involving guns and drugs. But in this particular area, our SI unit has been very effective in taking down major controlled substance trafficking operations involving cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and also large-scale marijuana transactions. So this FBI agent had contacted his supervisors, advising him that this would be a great opportunity for them to open up a task force in central Wisconsin dedicated to fighting the controlled substance issues that are impacting not only this county and Marathon, but also all the counties north of us. And in some cases, we are the hub for the Upper Peninsula and also the Arrowhead of Minnesota. The benefit of doing this is by having this task force be located here, it's underneath the sheriff's office, under our supervisors. They're assigning resources to us, which would be the one FBI agent. They are coordinating with us to provide Title 18 and Title 21 clearance for the 3 SIU officers that'll be assigned to that task force. What that means is that they have direct access to a lot of federal information regarding intelligence. And then they'll also will compensate us for any overtime that those 3 officers are involved with. And they're also providing vehicles for those 3 officers that are dedicated to that task force. It's a win across the board for us. But where it really comes into play is it's housed here in Marathon County, and we are partnering with Lincoln County right now, who will task one of their people down to us. We are in conversation with Stevens Point and Portage County, who will also bring somebody up. Wausau has expressed an interest that they'll probably jump on within the year, and there could be other additional opportunities to enhance this unit to combat the controlled substance scourge that's not only impacting you here, but also in our correctional facility. Where it's really beneficial is we take a lot of cases under the federal system already. This will be a direct line right to the federal system where asset forfeiture can take place at a much easier scale. And where the true benefit is, instead of having multiple agencies doing the same thing, all these agencies will be under one roof. So we look at it as a deconfliction because we're all working together as one combined unit for the benefit of central Wisconsin. It's, when I was approached by this, I couldn't really see any negatives as to not jumping on board. The reason for the need for the remodel is the SIU that we currently have. It's located within the sheriff's office complex, and there's not enough space to add 14 officers. So we will be remodeling another area that was provided to us by the county to house those office space. It'll actually be better access for our people that are working in undercover capacity so that they're not even coming in through our main doors. Again, I look at it as a win across the board for this community.
And is there any specific other questions? Supervisor Schaefer?
Not for the sheriff, but Mr. Chairman, what's left in the contingency fund and after the 328 is taken out?
The contingency fund, the only transfer out of the contingency fund, which was, Christie, was 30,000 that the Finance Committee discretionary contingency fund used. And so that's the only portion that's been used out of the 700,000 in the contingency.
So using this, it leaves you with $342,000 left.
Okay, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff Park, you said there's going to be room for 14. How many of those are going to be Marathon County deputies?
There'll be 3 officers that are going to be provided Title 18, Title 21 clearance that are working directly with the task force. But actually what you're going to see take place is our entire SIU, which is made up of 3 of our people, 2 of Wausau, and 1 of Everest, will all move down to that task force area because we want to keep everything under one roof. The one thing I forgot to point out then was this is a one-time request, and it's broke down. The numbers are $328,000. $308,000 actually goes towards the remodel. The other $20,000 is for software upgrade. Because of the fact that we have a forensic technology lab, and that technology lab needs constant upgrades, by bringing on the FBI into this task force, the FBI is going to provide us with upgrades to our software, which is about $15,000 a year just for the gray key. So that's going to save us $15,000 a year to keep our forensic technology lab more current than what it currently is. We can actually turn things around faster than what our DCI counterparts can.
Right. And the 14 number you mentioned is if everyone jumps on board, correct? Or what is the level of commitment you have for how many right now? I mean, SIU plus the feds and Lincoln County, you indicated.
8. We're sitting at 9 committed right now, and we had a meeting today where other agencies are looking to commit to us, but we're at 9.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you tell me what SIU stands for, please?
SAU is a Special Investigations Unit. Special Investigations Unit does all the controlled substance investigations for the Sheriff's Office. It's a combined task force of Sheriff's Office, Wausau Police Department, and Everest Metro.
Supervisor Mask.
Scott, does our SIU have arrest capability outside of Marathon County right now?
If we're working a coordinated investigation, then yes.
But with
So
the-
anytime that we leave Marathon County, we have to coordinate with whatever jurisdiction, and most likely it's the sheriff's offices that we coordinate with on a regular basis. In this particular case, by having us be part of the FBI task force that's going to be placed here, then that'll give our officers a lot more authority because they're acting under federal FBI guidelines.
So they don't have to go through another county, they can do it with this FBI?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Seibert.
Thank you. Are the other counties and municipalities that are going to be involved, are they cost sharing this, or is it a Marathon County cost only, or I mean, how is this happening?
So in regards to the task force itself, each agency that supplies us an officer has to pay for that particular officer's wages, benefits, and anything else that that officer needs as far as training, et cetera. The FBI will provide some training opportunities that they will cover, but it's no, even with our SIU people still be covered underneath all of our budget, but then we can ask for a return on any overtime dollars, and if it's granted by the senior staff down in Milwaukee, then we get reimbursed.
The other thing is that this is a remodel to the Marathon County's facilities, and we are sharing space with those other agencies and not so the remodel is on our facilities.
That's right.
And that remodel cost is all ours, that $328,000
That
is our expense.
Right, the first 308,000 is on that.
Any other questions on that resolution? Supervisor, go ahead.
How long is the task force anticipated to last? Because I know in the past, when the feds have come in, it's been a limited time engagement, maybe 2 years. Did they give you a time frame on their involvement on this exercise?
They said that basically it revolves around how active the unit is and how successful it is. Yeah, but they have been taking a look at the last 8 years worth of data and think that not only this unit going to be successful, it's going to be it'll surpass what we currently are doing. And so they're looking at this to be a long-term relationship, which is why they're trying to enhance it as much as they can. Milwaukee SAC was up here, Justin Tolomeo, and Justin and I are good friends, and he's behind us 100%.
When you look at the effects that drugs are having on all of the different departments in our county, I think this is nothing more than a win-win situation when we have involvement with federal agencies and have access to information that the feds, and we have information sharing between neighboring counties, along with increased access to the testing at the lab. I think that it is a great opportunity that we can't pass up, and look forward to having that discussion on Thursday and the vote on Thursday. But I think it provides an opportunity to the tax-paying citizens in Marathon County to actually have an effect on the drugs that are actually affecting all of the departments in the county. Any other questions? Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, from Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee, item D-A, Budget and Property Tax Levy Resolution, Resolution 57-18. Any questions or questions on that item? Okay, item number B, again, from Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee, amending the proposed 2019 budget. Anticipated budget amendment is a 2019 CIP project from Human Resources, Finance and Property request to amend the 2019 CIP budget. So we have the budget that was, that the Finance Committee adopted, and then the Finance Committee took a look at an item and recommended an amendment to that item, but could not amend it because it was posted for the public and is non-amendable until it is adopted by the board, and then amendments will be accepted on Thursday. So any questions on that item? Okay, we will then move into the budget hearing, and item number C will start with the budget message and summary by the administrator.
Okay, thank you. Let me just start out by saying that I've made this presentation now about 15 times, different groups and stuff, and I know what works and what don't work, so let me warn you a little bit. You know, this is your budget, but I've been grinding away at this since Labor Day. So if I start to look defensive, if you ask hard questions or something, just point that out to me, and I'll snap back into my normal demeanor, and you can have that conversation. And you should take a hard look at everything. It was only amended once by the Finance Committee, but that really doesn't represent the work that was done, because it was a 6-month iterative process where we continued to talk about ideas and incorporated those ideas in here. We talked about some ideas and then they just didn't work financially, and we didn't incorporate those, but for the most part we came up with the concepts together so that we tried to make this budget work. If you remember, last year was the first year we really borrowed for capital improvement, and that was made necessary by the tax levy caps. And we just didn't have enough money to go around, and we got tired of saying we're just going to defer maintenance on things. We knew that wasn't getting us where we wanted to go, and we spent down $1.6 million in reserves. So this year, again, the property tax levy caps have hit us again, and our property tax rate will be reduced from $4.95 to $4.80, a 15-cent reduction. Not because I think that's a good idea, but because that is the maximum that the current state formula will allow us to tax. Just so you have a sense, every cent is $100,000. So you're talking about $1.5 million less in terms of levy intake, just based on those caps. But with the increase in equalized value, now a number of your municipal officials, there's a difference between equalized and assessed value. Equalized is is a formula that the state creates so that all the municipalities are equalized. I've had 100 presentations on that. The best I can conclude is hocus pocus, and somehow something comes out, and we work from that. But with all of that, our equalized value of the total valuation of the county went up 4%. So even though we're dropping the tax rate 15 cents, we're going to take in $350,000 in new tax levy. Our cost to continue is somewhere around 1.2 million. And you see what the reason that this is a problem is it's not just like a one-time thing. Every year our cost is somewhere around 1 million to continue, and our intake is somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000. I think I know, no matter who is governor or who is in the legislature, in the next couple of years anyway, we're still going to have levy caps. I'm hoping that they can be loosened up to be more realistic, because we're making, we're getting backed into a corner where you're going to do things that hurt us, the taxpayers, long term. And so I'm hoping that, through WCA and through our lobbying and our local legislators, that they can see that some of the things that are happening are detrimental to the interests that they're trying to provide. They're not going to let us just go loose, all the units of government all at the same time, increase property tax, and there's a big increase in the bill. That's just not going to happen. Is everybody comfortable with the difference between the tax rate and the amount we take in the levy? Okay. I put in the document the average homeowner impact, but the truth is, if your assessment doesn't go up, you're going to save a little bit of money. Not enough to worry about, but you're going to save a little bit of money, and then schools and other things will offset that, and you'll probably pay about the same. That's the way my tax bill is going anyway. I'm on page 3 now, so I'll try to keep you up with me. Working capital. Last year we spent down $1.6 million of, I call it reserves. Some people call it working capital. It's the same thing. And the reason that it's important is we use that for cash flow, and we use it for emergencies. We are not spending down any in this budget, so I had to make that up elsewhere. And you'll see where as we talk about things. But that's the good news. The bad news is I was hoping to be able to pay down some of that over a 5-year period, not expecting we could do it all at once. But the best I could do, I just couldn't make the rope on this side meets the rope on that side, tie it together. The best I could do was not make the hole deeper. And so what we have is we still have that 1.6 million sitting out there that we need to come up with a plan to repay in the next 5 years. We just don't have enough money to do all the things that we need to do, and that's where it lands right now. Amendments that have made to balance the budget. We always in the past fully funded positions. We have 700 positions. We funded them as if they were all be filled all year long. I don't know why we did that, we just always did. But we can't afford that. I need to squeeze some money out of this. So what I did was with 2 departments, I took $200,000 out of there. In the private sector, I talked to some of the private sector HR directors. A common formula is 92% or 95% based on turnover. So I had also looked at the last 3 years. None of the highway or corrections departments had less than $200,000 left. If they do, well, then I got to do some fancy dancing and find it from someplace else during the year to make that full, because we still have to make payroll. But I think that's a safe assumption. Just so you know, budgeting closer on payroll, the benefit is it doesn't over-predict our expenditures. It more accurately predicts those, but it doesn't save you any money. It's $200,000 we didn't budget, but it's not $200 you can really do anything with. It just makes the budget a more accurate picture. The other is sales tax revenue. Here's another lesson I learned. This was at the eastern towns. I use an unfortunate explanation of what I had done in the past. And that was, well, I never fully funded for the sales tax protection. I funded for a lot of it, but I also held some back in case there was a recession. But I shouldn't have said, I put it in my pocket, so that in case something else comes up, don't use the word pocket, Senator Petrusky helped me with, and we won't be doing that again. And put it in my pocket. I just kept it back because I thought that there was always this possibility of a recession. And now, if there's a recession, there is no cushion. And the sales tax is the first thing that's going to change with a recession. I would like to still do that. There's a lot of things I would still like to do, because it makes it better if there's a problem, but if there's a recession, we're not going to get the $13 million that I have predicted. That was predicted for us by the state. So just so you know, that added $1 million. So it's not chicken feed, it's a lot of money. And economic support, those are, so understand this, we're in a consortium, which is a group, it does it regionally, and there's a new state relationship, and somewhere out of the blue, we got a $360,000 payment from, I think, the state, but really originally it's federal money. We never got that before, so we're glad to get it. But why is it I have a feeling next year it's going to be a bill for $250,000? You know, because I got a feeling that somehow they're offsetting this with that. If I had my way and we had enough money, I would put one-time money associated with a one-time expenditure. But I don't have enough money for that, so I stuck it in out-of-home placement of children, and it replaced money that had been working capital. So that's out there. I'm hoping for the best, that turns into a check every year, but I don't think so. We've not been given any clear explanation as to what that is. I'm on page 4 now, the new positions. And if you go to page 5, you'll see there were a lot of new position requests, but not a lot of money. So there is no new levy in any of the 4 that have been approved. The planning technician from the Conservation Planning and Zoning Department is funded by eliminating a casual position that has been working there for a long period of time. Casual position means they don't get benefits. It's intended to be temporary. If the job's going to be permanent, it's only fair to the person to make them a permanent employee and treat them like every other. So we're doing that. And then there were a number of zoning permit fees that were increased to offset the rest, the $45,000 remaining. That's still under discussion, but we're committed to at least doing $45,000 of that, so there's no new tax levy in it. Social services is taking a social worker position, upgrading it to a supervisor. This drug crisis is wearing everybody out, and you can't have supervisors not getting clear direction. So they got a little bit more of a federal grant called CTLS, Children's Long-Term Support, and they were able to fund that addition. A diversion program for the district attorney's office that will have fees attached to it, but also they eliminated a number of funding sources for outside experts. Organizational excellence in our office, we had been funding people who do both process improvement and management training. We have eliminated that and eliminated some other stuff for consultants, and we're going to take more stuff in-house, and it's been fully funded that way. One of the key issues of this budget is the new police channel. And I could not find a extra $453,000 to fund a new channel. Let me just tell you one thing. You can hear all different numbers. I have costed, for the 11 budgets I did, I cost them the same people. I cost at the midpoint, okay? Because that department director can hire people anywhere from 0 to the midpoint. So that's the highest number possible. And others are talking about the beginning number. Okay, well, everybody just pick a number and we'll go with it. It's probably not likely that they'd all be hired there, but you know, a job like that, you might be hiring experienced people, I don't know. So $453,000 is people hired at the midpoint, but it requires to really open a channel. And also, I'm blank, it's 6 positions. You can't open it with 3, you can't open it with 2, you have to open it with 6. So it's a major investment. I have an idea that the sheriff and I are in agreement to pursue, and that is the issue of the secure detention facility, which people always ask me what that is. It's, in common language, it's a jail for children under 17 years old. It's a very good facility. I'm proud of the people that work there. I think we operate a good facility, but it is very underutilized. It has a capacity of 20. We have an average census of 6. Our census of 6 has, I haven't fully costed it, but just salaries and benefits alone are pretty well flat. And it's about $1 million to operate that for 6 kids. And half of those kids are from other counties. Our revenues are $150,000. Okay. Anybody notice a problem there? Equal number, 150 versus $1 million. Okay, so if we were at 20, that number, the charging to others would be fine. But what happened in between time is 17-year-olds left the juvenile system after we built it, and that's a big piece of it because kids who get in trouble enough to be actually put in jail usually are older. And not always, but there aren't as many. And the other thing that happens statewide is there's been a change in philosophy. and incarceration is used less, and more kinds of therapy and other things are used more. If we can do two paths. Chad Billup and I met with the employees and people from social services, and the path number one we're going to explore is if we can fill our facility, we don't need to close it because we'll generate $350,000 more money. Okay, but that's a lot of effort, and one of the questions is, okay, if you could have done that all along, well, why wouldn't you do it now? Why didn't you do it before? But we're not going to worry about that because that's better for everybody if we can get the new revenue. The thing that worries me most is our senator has a bill that has almost passed a number of times, putting 17-year-olds back in the juvenile system that we support. Okay, so if you close a facility, you might have to reopen it again if things don't go right, and that doesn't sound good to me anyway. So if we can generate more revenue, that's plan A. And what we would do is we would take that new revenue and open a new police channel. And what we're talking about, no, is not just people coming, though, is we're talking about the counties that are telling us, oh, they're desperate, they need our facility, is they actually buying a bed. They're doing that now in Portage County. Outagamie's purchased 2 beds, they are guaranteed. Okay, and they have that. So if that doesn't work, then we're going to consider, and you'll have to vote on this later, closure, and then we would take our 3 kids and move them to Portage County. Or if there wasn't space at Portage County, but we think there would be, it would be La Crosse or somewhere else. Nobody thinks that's as good. Okay, but is that $350,000 not as good? So our first choice is let's keep our facility open. Let's expand the use of it by doing better marketing. I don't think it really pays to cost more because I think that'll work against us. If you cost more than everybody else is charging, you're probably going to get less, not more. So we're going to work that through. There's nothing in the budget for dispatchers. This process will be worked out, because here's what I know. A dispatcher and a jailer costs about the same. If I can eliminate the jailer position, I can hire a dispatcher position. This isn't going to be the nice, neat package the police chiefs want. What they would like and what the Public Safety Committee would like is 6 new positions that start on January 1 and start doing this. I'd like that too. And you can do that, but you're going to have to cut $350,000 out of something else. And I don't know what that something else is. So we can. This is your budget, and you can make that decision. But this is a critical decision, and we'll make, or you'll make it, and we'll make it happen. One of the things that's been talked. I'm on page 7 now. One of the things that's been talked about by a lot of people, and we had an iterative process with the Finance Committee, is this whole issue of booking fee. Try to get people who are put in jail to help pick up some of the costs associated with jail. And it comes, I think it's something we're going to study for the future, but I don't really think it's going to work out for next year. We already charge more the first day when we take in all the information. Otherwise, we charge $18 a day to go when you're in jail. And here's a newsflash. We don't get very much of it. We get as much as we can, and we don't get a lot because they don't have ability to pay or they're not paying, and collection isn't our forte. So if we charge more, that might be deemed to be excessive. Because we already are charging something for that. You don't collect. Now, the other thing that's interesting is our Corporation Council looked at the law, and it says you can charge law enforcement agencies. That's what it really says. You don't charge the individual. You charge the law enforcement for everybody they put in jail. Just think about that a minute. We're not doing that in my book. Because what that would open up is a Rib Mountain issue you won't forget. Because Wausau will pay, Rothschild will pay, Schofield will pay, and county will pay for Rib Mountain. That's not going to work out. So we're not doing that. You can do it if you want to. I think you're going to regret it. So that's an issue. The other issue that's out there is this whole courthouse security, and I also want you to know how much courthouse security costs. It costs $540,000. That's not just a screening. We also have officers that come, but that's what it costs, and that's a pretty stable cost. We talked about opening the police channel. If we thought it was a high enough priority, we could spend on working capital again. Now we're going the wrong way, though. The whole idea of the budget was we're in a hole, stop digging. Well, that would be digging. But we'd get the police channel, and that's how it'd work out. Employee health care on page 8. Well, I had a whole bunch of bad news coming from the state, and it comes, I don't know if you realize that, but our budget has to be done really the first week in October, and a lot of the information comes from the state comes like the first week in October. So, you got all these plans, and all of a sudden you come and in fact, after the budget was adopted by Finance Committee, we got notice that the general transportation aids were $190,000 less than they told us they were going to be in August. So, wow. So, that's how stuff goes. But right as we're completing the budget, I usually am feeling pretty good, because remember last year I told us our healthcare rates were the same as they were 7 years prior? That was really good. Well, this year, the word that filtered back to me was a 9% increase in healthcare, and it's already $1 million a month. And here is the deal, we just can't afford $1 million a month. So I had to work with our provider. We have a very unique provider in that we're fully insured, but it's a coalition of counties mostly. There's a couple of cities, I think, thrown in, and they work together as a pool, somewhat independently and somewhat together. And when we had good years, I noticed that our rates didn't go down because some of our good year was shared with those that had not so good years. This year we had a not so good year, and they cushioned us. So for a 6% reduction in premium, here's the things that I had to, or we did with regard to the plan itself. Right now, when you go to an office visit, you don't pay any copay, but now you'll pay $20 every time you go to one, except if you go to the county's clinic, and then there'll be no copay. There'll be no immediate pay, and there'll be no copay. In fact, there'll be no cost at all for any of the services provided at the clinic that we've opened and share with North Central Healthcare. The maximum out-of-pocket maximums will go from, I'm just work off families in the Aspirus network, from $4,500 to $5,000. So it'll go up $500. The generic, we had a plan where if you bought a generic drug, it didn't cost anything. So I remember going to Shopko, it's like, oh, how much you? Well, how much is the gum you got there? Okay, $2. So, there's nothing for $2 anymore. So if you get a generic drug, it costs $5. Those of you that have private sector plans aren't exactly crying, are you? These are pretty good, these are still pretty good benefit levels. And the preferred plans, most plans that person would get, they would pay 15% of the cost up front, and then there'd be a 25% copay beyond those are the brand name ones. So those were the changes that we made. Oh, we had the emergency room went up from $100 copay to $200, and the price to employees on the family plan would go up $6.98 a month. So we were managed to, by changing the plan design and our insurer covering some of this or spreading some of this with others, reduced from a 9% to a 3%, and that still turned out to be about $243,000. And that's a lot better than $728,000. So one of the things that I'm still disappointed is we created a really great wellness program here, one of the best I've ever seen. And if you go to have your blood pressure taken, weight taken, all those individual monitoring, and then you meet twice with a health coach, you get a 3% reduction in your premium, which means that for about 2 hours of work time, you can save yourself $700. What a deal. Now, you would think everybody would sign up for that, but only 40% of our employees sign up for that. I've got to drive that number up to 80%. I can't understand why they wouldn't. And one of the things I'm doing for proposing is not for next year, but earn next year, is if you participate in our wellness program, you have the possibility of a 5% increase. That's as far as I can go, because the courts will then think it's a punishment if you don't, if you go any further. But this is still within the scope. So we're going to try to increase that. It won't pay off next year. Changes in health behavior will become apparent in terms of medical costs in the next 5 to 7 years. One of the things I've learned, though, by being here 30 years, is 5 to 7 years goes by fast. And it not only be good for the cost of the county, it's good for people who work here to have better health. And we think we've got something going here, and that we've had a 6% increase of medical inflation pretty much the last 9 years, and we've only had one increase of 3%. That's not bad. If you go to page 9, when I came here as Human Resource Director, it was in 1988, and you can see the family premium was $220. And one of my important tasks at that time was drive that cost down, that's too much. And you can see that by 2019, I drove it down to $1,905. And still stayed employed. So it's like there was a lot of stuff that happened in between here and there. It ain't easy controlling healthcare costs, and I'll tell you what, this is the way the whole world is. It's like, holy man. Employee compensation, page 11. I funded in the budget a 2% pay increase, which is $800,000. It's actually more than that, but the state pays a number of wages for people who work at social services and federally funded programs. So that's kind of a minimum increase to keep our pay for performance plan alive, but it's all that I think we could afford. And that was helped by a 1% reduction, which saved us $100,000 in our cost of workers' compensation. Highway paving. Our policy is to pave 30 to 32 miles, and we're going to pave 32 miles next year. But we're going to do it in a different way. Just so you know, a mile is $225,000. I do not want to cut that back. That has been cut back in previous years, and that was a mistake. That's our highways last 20 years. That's enough to get us around the circle in 20 years. Deferred maintenance doesn't really save you money. It just makes things look good and makes your roads bad, and it just leaves a balloon payment for somebody else to pay. So we're not going to save money there, but we are saving money in a couple of things. One is that we did get some federal money to do some paving that can't be done by our crew. So our crew won't do as much paving. There'll be, I think it's 6 miles. I can't find it right now in the document. They'll be done by the private sector and paid for with federal money, or federal or state money, I'm not exactly sure. The other thing is that I want to talk about is bridges. Bridges are very important. And their school buses drive over bridges. In 2019, there's going to be a bridge over Highway Z in the town of Easton funded for replacement, and that will have $200,000 only in levy and $1.3 million in federal funding. And there's a bridge on County Road Q called Mole Brook Bridge in the town of Ringgold that is in the capital improvement program. It is not funded because none of the ranked projects are funded with carryover money from 2 years ago. We're going to have to borrow for that, and I'm going to strongly recommend that we do that. We have 9 bridges that need to be replaced. We have a lot of bridges, and this is another area, if you don't keep up, you're just going to create a balloon payment for somebody down the road, and you have the potential of that bridge, I think it might be too strong to say collapsing, but failing in some way that threatens the safety of the people who travel over it. I got state funding. I got a thing about what the governor said to the Counties Association. Never mind. Okay, so I got a feeling that it'll be different. I'm still hopeful that the new governor will increase the cost share of the state towards the funding. You can see that Governor Walker was talking about increasing their cost share to 30%. It's currently 19.5. That's a lot of money. I figured it out to be $775,000 in an increase. But I'll tell you what scares me with the new administration coming in, the idea of a 10% tax cut isn't going to leave a lot of money for new things. And if that actually happens, I don't have any idea. I don't know any more than anybody else does. But if that happens, you might not see a lot of the new money that you were thinking that you would get. I'm on page 12, but my staple has failed, so I might be on the wrong page at some point. Park capital projects. When I started doing the budget, I learned something. That was a lot of our Parks Department facilities were built in something called the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, and the Works Projects Administration of the Great Depression. And as a result, they're older buildings. They're like older homes. And if you don't take care of them, anybody who's had an older home knows how much that can roll up. So what I worked out with the prior director was we'd stick $100,000 in on what are the most important capital things. And we replaced a lot of doors and a lot of windows and a lot of stairways and a lot of things that wouldn't really be big enough to put in the capital improvement project, but Now we can see we're getting down to smaller things. We're down to replacing tables and stuff like that, so that's kind of caught up. But it's still, you need to keep at this, because if you're going to maintain an older home and you don't take care of it, you're going to have a brand new one needed some point soon. Start Right. Start Right, it provides education and home visits to at-risk families and newborn children. It is a non-mandated service. The cost is $1.7 million. We're the only county that has it. There was discussion at the Health and Human Services Committee about a $200,000 reduction, and they took a look at that. They learned about the program, and they decided that was not in our interest, and it is fully funded in this program, in this budget. Start Right is intended to reduce costs elsewhere in the budget. Child abuse and neglect, foster care, out-of-home placement, mental and interventions, arrests, and incarcerations. I don't think our county is low on any of those. So you could make the argument, but I think it's a long reach from that, well, it's not working, or you could say, well, I can't imagine what it would be without it. But we do need to hold this program accountable. We need to keep a high reins on it to make sure that it's functioning at a high level, because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money that we can decide what to do with, and if we're going to spend that kind of money, we got to make sure that we're getting a good return on our investment. I'm going to go to page 13. Broadband. Broadband is something that we all know that we need to do. We need to expand rural broadband. We've known that for a long time. How is the problem? You're going to be working with private providers, and we're going to be sticking public money, and how much public money goes in so that they can obtain all the return on it. We have to study that, but we have to do something. We are going to be left out in the cold if we don't. The campus dean for UW-Stevens Point, Wausau, recently sold a home in southern Lincoln County and sold it to a person who had teenage girls, and it doesn't have any cellular or broadband, and they didn't know that. So I think if they had the chance, they would return that house. It doesn't come like that. Can you imagine trying to sell a house right now without any of that? It really changes everything. I'm not sure that's the important part. The important part is there are a lot of small businesses that either could or already are in business here in Marathon County, and they have to have reliable internet service, or they're not going to function at a high level. That's going to put us at a great competitive disadvantage. I don't see the extension person who will be half-time Marathon County, half-time Lincoln County as being the expert on everything. But I see them as the case manager who constantly keeps people on task. And we may draw in experts, but we have to get this done. We have to make more progress than just talking about it, as we have for many years. Time has come. Funding of nonprofit organizations. The managers of some of the nonprofits are here at my invitation. I want you to make a fully informed choice on this. All of the nonprofits that are listed there are fully funded for 2019. It was my recommendation that they be funded fully funded for 2019, 2020, 2021. The Finance Committee has changed that. They agree that it's fully funded next year. The year after, it'd be 75% of 2019. The year after that, I'm going to get confused on the numbers, 50%. The year after that, 25%. So it would be a 4-year step down, more reliable step down, rather than going from 100%, 100%, 100% to zero. And you need to have a good conversation about this. Even though it's not in the budget, we need to decide what we want to do. I'll tell you what I'm trying to prevent. I have listened to people on the board for all the years I do the budget say we're just going to eliminate all of this funding, and you eliminate it in November and it becomes impactful in January. That's not right. Our community could not sustain that. If you're going to eliminate it, you have to have a phase-out period. If you don't want to eliminate it, that's fine with me. Let me tell you what the argument has always been. The argument has always been we do not have enough money to fully fund our mandated services, so why are we funding nonprofits? They could raise money in the community from other sources. And they will comment to you, I'm expecting tonight, as to how reasonable that is. Turn to my page, it's now 14. I never get enough of talking about the jail. I started my career talking about the jail because we built the new jail, and that time it was the issue. We should have been downtown or at 72nd. I'm still talking about it every day. We now are renting space from Lincoln, Shawano, Chippewa, Taylor, Langlade, Outagamie, and Marquette. I didn't even know there was a Marquette till we started renting space, but now I do. So it's south of us somewhere, and not very far, near Adams County. And here's the fact. Our jail is built with an optimal capacity of 250 and maximum capacity of 279. And our average census is 400, which means that we will spend this year and next year 1.2 to 1.5 million housing people outside just in the fees we pay, not including the officers shuttling, because they got to come back for hearings, they got a medical appointment, they're still in our custody. So the shuttling is a massive, and there are a number of public defenders who find me in the hall and say, I had a hearing with my person and they're not here. Where are they? Well, I don't actually know, but I do try to find out. You know, things go wrong when you're shuttling that big a, running that big a bus system. So it's not a perfect system. We have waited for this crisis to end and tried things to reduce the jail population. But it's my prediction that within 5 years, we're going to have a jail project. The key, though, is don't overbuild it. Build it for what your needs are, and you have to think about what those needs are. The writing is on the wall. It's not cheaper to keep them here. I don't think so. At least depends on how you look at it, maybe. But because when they cost their cost, they don't include the facility costs or the utilities. They mostly do people and stuff like that, and that's kind of what I call a public sector cost, and they don't include all the costs. So I'm not sure we can house them less than $50 that they're charging us, and they're competing with each other too. But here's what's going to happen. The drug crisis isn't just in Marathon County, it's elsewhere. And when they don't have any room in any of these counties, Chippewa, Taylor, we're going to be going some way too far. You can't go have our deputies driving to Racine County, and you can't have them driving to Kenosha. We used to do that with secure detention, but they spend the whole day plus overtime just driving people around. When there's no room at the end to rent, we're going to have to build something here. And we might want to start to think about how we're going to pay for that, because that's going to have a high price tag. Not so much the capital. The capital we can borrow for. It'll still be a lot. Peter Weinschenk did a thing. He thought it would be 88 cents on the tax rate to build the capital. But I don't know how he does math. So. but it's a staffing. And they can design jails to be more efficient. And I've heard people say we can do it with the same number of people if we double the size of the jail. I don't think so. That might be, somebody might have done that, but I wouldn't bank on that. I would guess that you're going to have a substantial increase in the number of people that it takes to monitor the people in jail. The good news, of course, is that we're at 401 and we're at 401 this year. We got a big problem, but it didn't get worse. Page 16. Out-of-home placements. And we're going to spend $5 million putting kids in out-of-home placements. We just had a immersion group from the chamber today, and they met with Judge Moran, and they asked him how he decided when to take a child out of the home. And he said, it's very painful. He says, I have to do it sometimes on a gut instinct, but I have to protect that child, and they have to go somewhere, and I know it traumatizes them. I know that even in the worst situations, family separation is a traumatic event, and they don't recover from that. And I only do that when I feel like I have to, but in almost all the cases that come to me, I feel like I have to. Unless the person can say, well, the social worker reports this, but they've shown these various steps in progress. Most of these cases are, there's one parent there caring for the child, and they're using methamphetamine or heroin. And it's hard to protect a child when you're using drugs like that. So it's a hard situation. It's a lot of money. This is exactly what the Social Services Board recommended to me. I've seen it done in budgets before where you move some down from correctional because it's a lot more expensive than foster care. We're not going to do that. This is the real cost. We're going to budget that and deal with it. Funding of other entities. Well, the biggest one is the $1.6 million that goes to our technology department, which is a partnership with the healthcare center in the city. And that's a 9%, 9.6% increase. All of that is attributed to software maintenance contract agreements. None of it's attributed to additional personnel or pay increases or any of that. It's all software maintenance agreements. Get used to it. There is just no way to stop that. We are becoming, in order to do our work, we're becoming more and more dependent upon software. It's getting more expensive. And then they stop supporting things. There's a bit of a racket in it. But here's the deal. We're not going to get away from that. That's not the direction life is going to go. The ADRC Central Wisconsin, mark this for your calendar for next year. I was part of the 5 people who crafted the agreements. And in order to get Wood County to agree, the Marathon County agreed that we would only increase the contributions to ADRC if everybody did. Well, there was only 2 of us then. Okay, now there's Langlade and there's Lincoln. And they have had, for at least the last decade, the same amount of money from local levy. And the number of people served is going up. You know, we can wait till there's a crisis or we can start to deal with this. We've got to start to think about this differently. It's been nice while it lasted, but you cannot just keep giving the same amount of money. They're getting basically the same federal money and think that that's going to serve an increasing population over a long period of time. The amount of money that we're providing to North Central Healthcare from levy is the same. Their budget is up. They've got a number of entrepreneurial things. Actually, I feel real good about how they're managing themselves financially and operationally. You can see that the shared service, our contribution is $3.3 million and almost $2 million for the nursing home. The nursing home is something you don't have to do. That includes $342,000 for the aquatic therapy pool. I mean, it's something, though, that the board has chosen to do, and we intend to narrow that gap for time by getting more intentional about having facilities that are competitive for the people who pay the full rate. And we're well into that process. Our regional planning is a membership, and we continue our membership. And there are, we had 2 fun things that were out there. One was we had the Weston Arrowhead money we could give to community groups that were well-deserving. They did environmental protection projects. Bluegill Bay was restored with a lot of that money. But we've now used that money, set that remainder of that money aside for people who have septic systems that are failing. In the past, they had something called the Wisconsin Fund that they could get partial funding for. And we will literally be replacing that with a Marathon County fund. Otherwise, our alternative is you have a failing septic system. It's going to cost $12,000. Oh, by the way, your annual income is $12,000. And it's just not going to work out. What are we going to do? Order you off your own property? You're talking probably about an 85-year-old woman living on it's just not going to work out. So we are setting aside the rest of that environmental protection funds for our new fund that will provide partial funding for those that are ordered to replace a failing septic system. The other is the economic development initiatives. I used to really enjoy awarding that, but I ran out of money. And you can put that back if you want. A lot of great things were funded with it, but it was usually about $50,000. But the cornerstone of this was the Ginseng Festival. I think it really needed our I don't know, we contributed maybe $30,000 to get it launched. Well, it's launched now, but if something new comes along, we won't have that money, or we'll have to find a different source for it. My voice is just starting to run out, and Christy's going to take over in a minute, but let me just go over the key things on page 17. In fact, I think all of the department budgets are less than 2% increase. So a lot of people had a lot of bigger ideas than that, but we didn't have a lot of bigger money, so we had to work down to what worked. The 2019 budget is balanced without spending down any working capital. There are 4 new positions, but no new levy to fund them. The secure detention facility is something that we're going to try to make more efficient. Either we'll gain new revenue where we are and fund those new police channel positions, or we'll close it with your consent and use the remaining money to fund those police channel positions. Employee health care, We managed to drive down from a 9% increase to a 3% increase with the support of our health care provider called GHT. We are going to pave 32 miles of county road. That's consistent with our policy. We're doing it in a different way. We're drawing down some more money to help pay for that. We're going to be going to have a case manager, I'm going to call it, or a project director for broadband coming out of extension. And, you know, I've heard some that, well, we had that before, people had that in our caseload and didn't go, well, this is going to go well. If this is what we're creating that position for, or it was always a position, you know, the person will be held accountable because we have to get this done. It's a top priority. It's not something that's not going to be noticed. Under the proposal we have in front of you will be a 5-year plan to process to phase out funding for nonprofit agencies. Out-of-home placements. You know, the drug epidemic is not only the jails, it's also the out-of-home placements. Huge expenditure of $5 million. We don't have enough money for any of the ranked capital programs. The capital improvement program that was funded with the funds that were unspent from 2 years over is dead. Okay? We have to borrow for the ranked projects. You don't have to borrow for them all. Next year, the improvement I want from the Capital Improvement Committee is a pass-fail mark, okay? They're all good projects, but tell me where we should stop funding. I could decide that, but why would one person just sit in their office and decide? The committee who's studying it should decide. We'll work together to come up with something, but I need to know how far we need to go down that list, if we need to go down the whole list or just part of it. But we don't have enough money to even fund all of rolling stock this year. We're going to have to borrow for that. That includes some highway vehicles. And one of the amendments you're going to see is I think we can save some money and end up with better vehicles if we go into what's enterprise offering through WCA, where you lease some vehicles and then they resell them because they're really experts at reselling them. So we're going to try to get some of the money out of that. That'll probably be operational after that, so that we can experiment with that in the Conservation Planning and Zoning Department and some other department's not occurring to me. What's the Facilities Department? Thanks. I heard that somewhere. Yeah, that's great. You know, when we talk about 2020, alcohol and drug abuse, that's the theme. I mean, that's what's driving our cost up. That's what's driving our jail census. That's what's driving our out-of-home placement. That's what's driving up all of our costs, or not all of our costs, but a lot of our costs. You know, the healthcare is always going to be a big issue because it's $12 million. So I've got to get people more involved in protecting their own health. Good for them, good for the county, good for everything. Mental health, you know, we have the new drug court, and we've always had an OWI court. They are successful, especially on the drug court. It's a real struggle. It isn't easy. It's an everyday struggle for people. It's a lot easier not to get a drug dependency than to get rid of one. It's an everyday fight, and if you think it's going to be magic, it isn't. But it's a lot better than just being in a revolving door coming in and out of the jail. It's good for the county's costs long term, and it's a lot better for people to see that they get their addiction under control as best as it can be, but it's not magic. It's a lot of money and it's not magic. But we can't drop those things. If we drop them, we're just going to end up building a 600-person jail. Mental health is a big part of everything. Everything's getting labeled mental health these days, but it is a key. You know, if people are not responding to the normal incentives to stay out of jail, something's triggering that. I don't know what that is, but they're not healthy people. We have McDevco, who will probably be here speaking today, has a $200,000 revolving loan fund that has been established, $1 million from us, $1 million from Alexander, and a line of credit or the basis for another $1.2 or $1.3 million from banks. So, you know, we need to use that fund to drive up commerce, hopefully drive up wages in our community, and that will improve a lot of different things. And the capital improvement plan, if I haven't said it already, it's broken. We can't keep doing what we're doing. Nobody else does. We rode that horse as long as it could go, and now we're going to have to do what other places do and borrow for our larger capital needs. Working capital, we need to come up with a plan to repay that. I'd like to leave us in the same condition that we always were in. We have plenty of money for cash flow, we have plenty of money for everything. I don't know what the right number is for reserves, but all of the auditors have come here, said Marathon County is well reserved. Okay, well, I don't want to be under reserved. And if you start spending down working capital, one-time money for operations, it ends up in a place where you don't have any, and then you have trouble. From a legislative perspective, the most important thing I hope the county association works on is with the new administration is getting some loosening of the levy caps. Understanding so that it keeps up more with what our cost to continue is. And we'll work on everything else. I don't think we're afraid to make hard choices. And we're talking about some hard choices already. But we can't just keep grinding things down and think that it just goes on forever. I'm going to turn it over to Christie. If there are any questions for me, they can ask them now or later.
Any questions specifically to Brad? We also have a discussion by the board on the full proposed budget coming up as a later topic, item number D.
Okay. Then Christie will take over because my voice has run out, and she'll talk about the capital improvement program and the departments.
And try to.
Thanks.
You want to flip us? We had technical difficulties. We're going to try back onto the.
What's wrong?
I'm just gonna. I'm gonna do both. So I've got notes that I will try to put all on this tiny little table.
Can you close that one?
No, I think that's what happened, that it was kind of messed up, so I'm just do this.
There you go.
All right, so what we're gonna do is just go through really quickly the 5-year on all the department budgets. And as Brad said, most of them are under 2%. There are some that are not, and you're gonna say, well, what do you mean? Like, Justice System Alternatives is up 10.6%. You're crazy, that's not too. Well, last year, for this year's budget, 18, you put over $1.6 million of working capital into this budget that we have this year to cover costs of operations. So in some cases, the increase is higher because I funded it with a revenue source called fund balance in 2018, which we no longer use. We use zero fund balance called working capital to balance the budget 19. There's no use of one-time money. So when I go through this, I'm going to talk to you about as far as Justice System Alternative, the increase is $131,000. But in 2018, of that number, that's expenses, you'll see it's up $248 right here. $98,214 of that money that we budgeted in 18 for Justice Alternatives was fund balance, working capital fund balance from the county. And that was so that we could start our drug court? Is that the new?
I think it was.
The drug court. We have OWI and drug. I don't remember, I have to remember. OWI has always been there. This is our drug court. So it's we fully funded the drug court this year without using any one-time money. That is why it is up. If you take that off, it's only up 1.2%. So if you take the 131,588, which is right here, and take off the 91,214, you're only up 1.2% overall. So that's a little bit of a misnomer when you look at it. It really is fully funding all of your operations without that additional one-time money. Capital improvement is down a little bit. Those are really contingent upon the projects that are being done and approved in the capital improvement fund. Again, clerk of courts is up 1.4%. Planning's Conservation Planning and Zoning is down a little bit over 2%. You added a new position, but with the elimination of the casual employee and the increase in fees, that actually allows you to have an additional full-time employee. But with the fee increase, we've been able to mitigate any of the increase in the tax levy for that department.
We transferred healthcare out of that department.
Yes, we have policy. We like it when our employees get married to other employees at the county, because what we do, and one of our primary examples I'll give you is Brad Carger. His wife worked in social services. And so our policy was if both employees work at the county, we, the county, have the right to choose to apply the premiums for insurance to the employee that has the least impact on the county. And in the case of Brad and Linda, his wife, she worked in a department that had received some grants. So she actually carried insurance while she was employed with us. And so we just have that as a policy. They don't lose anything. Nobody's going to, we don't count it against them or for them. It just is to our advantage. So fortunately, we had an employee in CPZ that got married to another employee, and we were able to move insurance. So you'll see it increased in another department because of that. So not that we encourage this type of activity, but it does when it occurs. We make sure we take advantage of our ability to charge the premiums to other outside entities. And I always give that example because they get a little funny with me, and I say, well, Brad was one of our first employees, and then they're like, oh, okay. Corp Counsel, theirs is up because congratulations, the employee that was married actually works in the Corporation Counsel's office, so they get some money back because they do child support and some other work that is supported by federal and state grants. So to us, that's a benefit, but it is up a little bit because of those things as well. County Board Supervisors is up, and that is up a little over 2%, but there was a pay increase for the chair that was approved, and that's been fully implemented in the 19 budget. County clerk is up. She has something called elections, so we have increases based on some of the software and the maintenance costs for her elections as well. So and that's only $28,000. Debt service is up, and that's really for your one debt service that you have that is for the 2018 CIP. It's a 3-year debt service, and that levy, I'm just going to let you know that operating levy we talk about a lot. We cannot go over a certain number. But debt service levy is independent of that number. So the debt service levy law says it has to be for debt service that's been authorized by the county. And so this is basically following your debt service schedule, and the tax levy can be what it needs to be in order to pay the annual debt service payment for 2019. District attorney is up slightly. That is because we did add the diversion person. We will be receiving funding for that person, but since it's starting up, you kind of have that upfront cost. You got the person going, and they will be getting rolling next year to be receiving fees for diversion and some other items, but we want to get the person fully on board, full-time cost, and then money will be coming in to offset some of those costs in the future. Emergency management is down. Employee resources up slightly. 2 reasons for employee resources being up. They have a $12,000 maintenance fee on a software that's exclusively used by them. It's not used by any other department. And they also have a software upgrade. So about $12,000 of that increase is really based on software management that they have for application software for recruitment and stuff. Facilities and capital management is up 2%. A little bit over 2. Finance up 2.01. County insurance, this is the county insurance charge to the departments within the general fund of the county. We used offset with the insurance funds own a fund balance in order to pay for that. In the past, we did not. Health is down, and it's why the expenses are in red is that there was one small grant change that was passed by the finance committee at their meeting on October 22nd. That is a slight change from what it was in the county administrator recommended budget, but the tax levy overall did not change. Highway came in at 4.82% increase. That also includes a reduction to, they actually came in at $2.8 million over last year's levy. That got reduced down to $370,000. That includes not fully funding all of their trucks. It includes cutting many projects, and it also includes a $200,000 cut to their wages for 2019. Chair, there's a,
Can I ask a question now, or do you want us to wait?
Let's wait till the end, please.
I'm just checking my notes when I go on. Then I'm just, if they're 2% or under, I just make note, library's down. Medical examiner is up under 2%. Parks, Rec, and Forestry is up a little over. The Parks, Rec, and Forestry has several enterprise funds. They're not true enterprise funds in our government accounting, but they run like a, try to run like a business, 9 Mile, Sports Complex, and Marathon Junction. We do have tax levy of $98,000 at soccer fields, or what we call the sports complex. We have an additional almost $16,000 in tax levy at Marathon Junction. So one of the things that I know Jamie's working on is looking at alternatives to try to reduce the amount of tax levy support in those. And I know that we have reduced the sports complex tax levy over the last year or two by, I think it was like $120,000 in levy for that one alone. So that one is coming down and is being more successful, and we've had a lot of big soccer competitions. And
One of the other things, Christie, is that we have worked out a much more reasonable cost share with the fair board for the services we provide in setting up and taking down the fair. Before, it was hard to justify what we were charging them.
so we anticipate that coming down, but I just want to make a point that it is up, and those are where you can look at where that number's coming from. Registered is up slightly. His revenues are staying the same. When they had a lot of refinancing, he was doing well, but his revenues are down slightly, although he's still positive for tax, negative tax levy for us. Sheriff's Department, you see the General Sheriff's Department, which includes pretty much everything, the SA unit talk, patrol, bomb squad, all the fun sheriff things is up a little over 2%. And then you'll see adult correction, juvenile detention is up 16.5%. Last year, or it would be 2018, you'll see that they were up, I just gotta grab it. We put in from the county's working capital reserve an additional $750,000 for out of home or out of county placement, driving your inmates to other counties, and an additional $26,352 for food. Therefore, in the 18 budget was built with one-time money to cover the cost of the jail in the amount of $776,352. In the 2019 budget, $0 from one-time money is being used to cover those costs. So if you took those out, the increase in levy for the sheriff jail detention center would be 3.5% instead of 16.5%. So that number is a little bit higher than what we had. Again, we did not use $1.6 million in one-time money for building the 2019 budget. Of that money would have been put into the jail from 18.
And the 3% represents the increased cost in food and medical care.
Yeah. Shelter home is up just a little over 2%. You've talked a lot about the juvenile facility is not only the juvenile jail, but there's also a shelter home portion of that, and that's the non-jail portion of the facility itself. Social services is up slightly. And last year we used $350,000. For this year's budget, we've used $350,000. Actually, we used $438,097 in one-time money to cover the cost of out-of-home placement at 18. This year, we used that $360,000 that we got from the feds. So we replaced one-time working capital money from 18 with one-time federal dollars for economic support. Again, it's one-time money, but it's not using our own reserves, so we'll see if we can reduce that number or be able to fully fund it with those revenues on an ongoing basis. So even though it's down, I just want to make mention, we did use one-time money for that. Solid waste is not tax levy supported, never has been. And they're going gangbusters out with the Bluebird Ridge out in there. Support for other agencies, you'll see the total dollar amount being the almost $9 million. A little bit later in the presentation, we'll have that. Transfer between funds is the money that we move around between county funds to pay for things. And that's just an in and out. Treasurer is, when Brad said he put 1.1 million additional money in sales tax, when he said that we increased our interest income because we're doing well on our investments and interest and penalty on delinquent taxes, all of that money, the 1.7 increase, basically is what all he talked about is where our good economic windfall hopefully will last into 19, and that is the budget that money is going to. So that is where all those dollars are being put in the treasurer's budget, because she's the one that collects the sales tax and does
So
all
tell
that.
all of your friends, spend everything you got,
Cars,
save nothing.
yeah, here, Amazon's taxed. Extension, again, we have a half-time broadband, otherwise they're doing great. Veterans always does a good job, they're at 2%. Wisconsin Airport, never, ever, ever, one time we've had to put levy to it, and that was in 2002 because of the fact that 9/11 happened 2001 and that they needed a little bit of extra help from us to keep recovering 2002. They have in debt, for the debt service, they have over $1.3 million in debt service payments that they make. You have a $40 million facility, beautiful terminal, beautiful car rental facility, nice parking lots. That is all paid by operations, PFCs, CFCs, and additional money that they're getting from the federal FAA and other support from the other state and federal governments. So they are able to manage that on their own. And we talk to them quite often on making sure that we can get that done. But they've been doing a pretty good job of upgrading the facilities, capturing as much discretionary FAA money they can and paying their bills on their own without the support of either Portage or Marathon County. Special ed is in and out. They are actually considered a quasi-department of the county, but they cannot levy a tax on their own, so we need to approve them in our budget so that they can go out and levy the tax on the school districts that they affect. Again, we talked a little bit about ADRC. That's their budget. Total budget for the year is $162 million, and the tax levy is $49,489,841. And that is based on the maximum amount we can levy on the levy limit for next year. Just going over, these are the, they were listed in Brad's letter. ADRC, you can see that tax levy is always the same for us because all 4 counties need to agree to increase it. We have community action at the same amount each year. Economic development, this number that you see is the number that we talked about, which was a portion of the money for economic development that was discretionary to committees here. We have economic boot camp, 40, historical society, healthy teens initiative. United Way is 40,000 in here. Why did we put that in there? Where that come from? It was actually listed for years in the social services budget under 211 United Way. We thought because it isn't support, is it another agency? Instead of listing in the social services budget, we put it in here because it's not really it's the 211 program, which isn't really specific directly to social services. So we just put it in here so that it's more. It just shows what we're providing support to United Way for. McDevco is the 180. Regional planning we talked about. PPA gets 20,000. Family care contribution is actually the amount of money that comes in and is our guarantee of 22% of the cost of keeping family care. That was always budgeted and paid for from the healthcare centers funds. It really isn't. So because it's actually coming in through base county allocation and was being paid by the county healthcare center, we put it in a separate item. It does not affect the tax levy between the county and the healthcare center. The tax effect is 0, but we put it out there so that we can identify it as why the healthcare center looks lower, but it's because we're going to be moving that transitional payment for family care into social services in the future, but we wanted to put it out there so we knew why we reconcile the healthcare center to last year's 18's budget to 19. Fair, women's community, the data center, which we talked about, healthcare center, we break into two parts, which is the nursing home at 1.5, and the remaining part is the healthcare center proper and Crime Stoppers. So the total for the support for other agencies equal the amount on the 5-year, and that is, any questions on the department 5-year? It's really what they are. Again, highlights are we did not use one-time money. We made it up with other monies within the budget, and we are at the maximum levy for levy limits for the state of Wisconsin for us. And what I'm going to do is just talk about the CIP quickly. It's a very small sheet, and what happened at county. You'll see where things are funded, and when we had the reduction of 190,000 in the highway aids, what we did was we moved it. We put CIP funding to the bituminous. In the past, we didn't have CIP funding in bituminous. We then put levy into the 278, which is the county highway maintenance sub-fund for highway, and that's where we put the difference between the levy the revenues we were getting and the levy that we needed, and then we cut 200,000 from the funding that we were going to give to the highway for their rolling stock. So that's where it shook out. So you had about 200,000 that had to move around the highway department to cover the cost of that revenue loss. We took the CIP out of the truck, we put it to bituminous, and we left the levy in the county highway maintenance fund so that was supported. And that was just the shifting of the shell game that we did in order to make sure that we didn't impact. And the levy amount that was in the county administrator's recommended budget for highway and this budget from the finance committee is the same. And that's kind of what happened. As you see, the borrowing will be right here approved by the county finance committee. It will be these items, anything over 400, and including the rolling stock highway trucks that we were not able to fund because we ran out of CIP money. And that is what has been approved by the county finance committee and was published in the newspaper, and that's what you'll vote on. I'll just go through quick charts and then tell you what the amendment was to the budget that you'll be proposed on Thursday. Again, your tax rate, talked about the equalized value goes up higher than the amount of money I have that I can levy a tax for. Therefore, your tax levy goes up slightly, but because the equalized value is higher than my amount of net to construction, your rate is going down, and that's just a history of that. Revenue by budget category just tells you where the money goes, or where all the money that's collected, 41% taxes. Another approximately 1/3 of your budget's going to be intergovernmental grants and aids, and the rest you can see there. Expenses by budget, so who are we spending all our money on? 27% on the general government, which is basically everybody that lives in this courthouse, except the sheriff's department, and then most of the CPZ department down at the River Drive. So if you want to know who general government people are, it's us and most of CPZ. The rest of them you can kind of figure out from the rest of the pie chart, and that shows you where we're spending our expenditure budget. Sales tax, again, I'm not going to go through a lot of these charts, it just shows you the increase that we had, what we've been recognized and what we got. Shared revenues, fund balance policy, so you know why we how much money, what do we have in money? What are you talking about working capital? So here's kind of what our fund balance policy is and where some of that money is. Capital improvement plan, why we don't have much money in there. You can take a look. In 14, we had the most, and it's been reduced substantially over the last 2 years. Contingency fund, that number, if you pass the 328,000, you add that to the 30, and that's where you've spent so far this year. Transportation aids, we have our new lower number. Tipping fees. passenger facility charges. This is the money that we get for employments that helps us pay the debt service on some of those debt services so that they can make their 1.3 million in the annual debt service payment. And that brings you to your budget resolution that you will look at Thursday. And you may or may not approve any amendments. The only amendment that was made, and I'm sorry I put my working worksheet in here, the only amendment that was made was to CIP. What we had is one $25,000 vehicle that was going to go to facilities and capital management. After that was approved on October 22nd by the Finance Committee, Enterprise Fleet Management come with a proposal that says we could rent for facilities and capital management and CPZ up to 10 cars for 5 years, and they gave us an annual payment plus a payment back for selling our old vehicles. So with that, it was about a wash to get the 10 cars for about $25,000 net of sale, and I didn't use all the sale dollars that they were proposing. And so really what you've done is you basically, instead of buying one $25,000 truck for one department, we're going to do a pilot program, which means that these two departments will get the 10 leased vehicles, and that it's really the only thing that changed it, and the budget resolution that amends the budget, so it's not going to affect operating. It's not affecting anything, but the CIP is being split between those two and being looked at as a 5-year experiment pilot program to do a lease vehicle for departments. Those two departments are participating. And the proposed amendment says it's going to be a pilot program. We're going to start it out. We're going to try it. It just moves the 25 from one to the other department so that they're leased vehicles. And then we're going to come back to the Finance Committee and take a look and see how it's working and see if if it's something we want to pursue in the future, we'll implement an actual policy that will run through CIP and for finance. So that is something you will see on Thursday, and that's really the makeup of that big, long budget amendment. And that's all I have. If you do have a budget amendment, there is a blank one Scott will talk a little bit about that. If you do have one, we encourage you to come and ask us. We write up anything that's legal, but this is the format of which we would like it in so that we know if you're going to add or take money from somewhere, we need to know what the offset is so that we can balance that budget out. And that's all I have.
Okay, is there any questions before we go into the public hearing and ask for public comment? Supervisor Seiler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was for Brad. Hopefully your voice is a little strong.
I'm recovered now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Back on page 4, and you were talking about the secure detention facility.
Yep.
And I know that there's a lot of things that need to be looked at, but just curious right now whether you know, or maybe Mr. Chair from WCA conversations, I know this has been an item of discussion for many years, but if the age of the juvenile criminal court jurisdiction would go back to 18, that has a significant, could have significant fiscal impact on the county. And so I'm just wondering what thoughts are as far as this closing of the building and the staffing. I mean, do we know enough about that, or has there been any serious move to do that? Because I know one of the issues is the funding that probably wouldn't come back. Just wondering how viable that really is and what that means for our building and staff consideration of that facility.
Yeah, one of the discussions that has been had, I serve, and I'm fortunate enough to serve on the WCA Executive Committee. We've had discussions, and I've also had discussions with the senator where, when that bill was proposed at the last session, to bring the 17-year-olds back out of the adult facility back into the juvenile correctional facility. The issue and the hang-up that the WCA, the Wisconsin Counties Association, had problems with was the amount of additional funding that came with that. And so that was the hang-up. That's where that bill died. So there is discussion about a possible reintroduction to that, bringing those 17-year-olds back into the juvenile correctional facility, as long as they are not violent. And so, but the hang-up, the WCA insisting on is it be fully funded from the state. So don't know with the likelihood. Obviously, we have a new legislature and a new governor, and so we will. It's still an initiative, still a item of priority that the WCA is lobbying on, but they're lobbying on behalf of also having fully funded.
Just to add to that a little bit, Supervisor Seiler, if that happens, this is a bad plan.
Closing it would be a bad plan,
Yeah. You
absolutely.
know,
Absolutely.
if I thought it was going to close, then I wouldn't do that. And we're going to continue to monitor that as the year goes on. But, you know, it's a bad plan if that happens, because we'll probably end up reopening it, and that might cost more than what we're getting out of closing it, so.
Sure. Just follow up, just out of curiosity, I did pull up some things here, and this is something from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, and they were, I suppose this is the legislature's perspective on it, said that increased cost to county level juvenile corrections could be offset to some extent by cost savings in the adult correctional system. And I was just wondering if we have, it'd be interesting within our own county to know what that is, so that, you know, as we're making a decision that's fully informed, there's a lot of things to consider here for the
We'll
future.
continue to monitor that, because, you know, if you have one person less in another county jail, you're going to get that savings.
Right.
And it's hard to imagine, you know, because you don't end up with a stable number either. So it's hard, it's got a lot of thought, more thought has to go into this. You know, this is what we said we wanted. We wanted the funding source for new and emerging top priorities to be lower priorities. The secure detention facility has been identified through our process as a lower priority. But just, you know, you're pointing out exactly what it is. This is really hard work. It's a lot easier just to have new money and buy new things that you need than to give up something that you already have. So it needs to be thought through. It could turn out to be a decision we regret, but it won't regret too much, because we're not going to repurpose that building. I don't know what we're going to do with that building for a while, but we have to continue to monitor that. If they come back, I don't know how many numbers or how much money you're going to associate with it. The best possible option is the option we're pursuing now, and that is that we get it up closer to our capacity.
Okay, Supervisor Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Christie, with the enterprise project, we're getting 10 of these vehicles. Does that mean that we're giving up our 10 worst vehicles and they'll be selling them in the pilot? And is there consideration to the fact that with a leasing program, we won't have to stock replacement parts, we won't have to do maintenance on the vehicles, so we would also have a cost savings in the maintenance on our vehicles? Is that all being considered?
Yeah, let me answer that. Yes, it is all being considered. The enterprise program has been tried with some other counties, and it really is pretty successful. What they are is they rent vehicles, and they know when the time is to sell them. You know, what you could do, the other way you could figure that out is find out what I do and do the opposite. They know for each vehicle at what time you should trade that vehicle in and get the most resale. And they have a system set up so where, you know, they're in charge of the maintenance. We lose the maintenance costs. For the vehicles we're talking about now, we don't have mechanics. We just take them to regular places.
So it would be a cost savings right
It is
off
a
the
cost
bat.
savings. I think it's going to be a significant cost savings when people really take a look at it, but we need to work it through. And I have an insurance issue that I'm working through. You know, when you do something new, there's always a bunch of issues. That insurance issue wasn't the most important thing on my plate right away, so we'll work it through now that the budget's adopted.
The other thing that, as that program has been described to me, because Enterprise buys in such large volume, they're buying at wholesale prices, and then we turn around and sell. We're selling them at retail prices. So, I have had discussions with other counties that have utilized this program, and they've found that they've had the use of the vehicle for a 2-3 year program or 2-3 year period and turned around and sold that vehicle for more than they had invested in it to begin with. So as the administrators clearly pointed out, we're looking at this as a pilot project and anticipate that it will be a success, but we will be monitoring it on this start program, start of this. Any other questions for the administrator? Again, we do have, at the following of the closing of the public hearing, we do have additional discussion. So I guess I would ask the board to hold off any further discussion and that we go into and open the public hearing. So I'll have the public reading of the proposed 2019 budget, and I'd ask the clerk to read that proposed budget.
Marathon County Notice of Public Hearing, Consolidated 2019 Proposed Budget Summary. Residents and taxpayers will take notice that the Marathon County Board of Supervisors have arranged for a public hearing on the 2019 tentative budget to be held in Marathon County Assembly Room at Marathon County Courthouse, Wausau, Wisconsin. An official public hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, November 13th, 2018 at 8 p.m. with final approval on Thursday, November 15th, 2018 at 7 p.m. The public hearing will be for the benefit of the Marathon County taxpayers who desire to be heard. The following is a summary of the tentative 2019 budget. Public inspection of the detailed report may take place at the office of the county clerk or the finance department. Proposed for 2019, tax levy is $49,489,841. The mill rate is 4.8047, and the equalized value is $10,300,308,900.
Okay, now the public hearing is open, and this is the opportunity for the taxpayers and anyone in Marathon County to have a speak on their budget. So I would invite each and every one that wishes to address the board on the budget to step forward one at a time, and please provide your name and the issue that you wish to speak to the board about.
Good evening. My name is Jim Warsaw. My address is 5505 DJ Lane in Weston. I am the executive director of McDevco. I just want to make a couple of comments about McDevco's service to the county. We just celebrated our 40th year in serving Marathon County for the economic development issues. We are currently addressing, in 2019, we are addressing 5 of the 12 strategic initiatives that the county board has set for itself. One of those is the broadband issue. The others are related to building the entrepreneurial environment that we would like to see here in Marathon County. You were kind enough to agree to match a grant that we received from the Judd Alexander Foundation earlier this year for $1 million. You provided another $1 million, and we've also made arrangements for a $1.4 million line of credit with 4 area banks. Those funds will be utilized as gap financing for projects that are being proposed throughout Marathon County, not just in the city of Wausau. The money that we receive, we are set with a specific administrative fee, and that fee is around $30,000 for the money that we've received from the county. It'll also be $30,000 from the foundation. That's very in line with what we currently receive from the city of Wausau in managing their CDBG loan portfolio. We appreciate the support that we've received from the county, and we will continue to provide that going forward. We do recognize that there will be a slight reduction in the county's support in 2020, and that was all discussed at the time that we received the grant from the county for the revolving loan fund. We're very hopeful that there is another source of revenue that we are going to be able to regain this next year, but that is still way up in the air, and it's really out of our control. It will be in the control of 6 other counties. So we'll see if we can get that money back. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I invite the next speaker.
I'm Jeff Sargent. I'm the Executive Director of United Way of Marathon County. I live at 920 Winton Street in Wausau. And I just want to thank you for your service to our county. I'm just thankful that we have people like you that are willing to get involved and do the hard work and come to meetings at 8 o'clock at night when many of us are thinking about we would rather be in bed. But I want to just make a couple comments about nonprofit funding in general. I hope that you reconsider your strategy. I think that now I understand that there's challenges within a budget. I do think that there are services that many of these organizations provide that are beneficial to many of the residents in this county, and that if the plan goes through as you have laid it out, there could be ramifications on the backside. Let me give you a couple examples. 211, which is a United Way funded program that the county funds. We operate a 211 call center. We take calls, we do text, and we do chat with people. This is a service that's available for anybody in our county, so any resident of our county can access this service. This year so far, we've provided approximately 7,500 referrals for people that have contacted 211. Many of these referrals are impacted, and the families are impacted by many important critical issues, many of which your budget attempts to try to address. A couple examples of this is 211 is part of the Wisconsin Addiction Recovery Hotline. That 211 is the recovery hotline for the state of Wisconsin to try to address the growing needs of addiction, to provide information, referrals, and assistance to callers to navigate various systems to get the services that they need. Wisconsin also, or 211 was also written into state statute as part of Act 250, which is part of the foster care, foster forward legislation. And the reason that this was built into that legislation is the realization that people need information and referrals to get access to services that benefit them. Everybody in this county has issues that they need to address and deal with, and that 211 is a resource that potentially benefits everybody. So when you're considering looking at nonprofit funding and you're considering looking at services to help the residents of this county, many of these services are beneficial, whether it's poverty reduction, whether it's domestic violence, in this case, whether it's information and referral services. These are all things that are part of the county's strategic plan that have to do with having our county be the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous county for our residents. So I thank you for your support in the 2019 budget. I hope that it's something you think about for future in terms of the ramifications of potential cuts to nonprofit organizations that benefit many residents in this county.
Thank you. Any additional individuals who would like to address the board? Gene?
I'll be brief. Jeff did a pretty good job. I'm Diane Sunholz. I'm representing North Central Community Action Program, or North Central CAP. Marathon County funding provides the cash match necessary for our permanent supportive housing program. That's a program that houses the chronically addicted people in our community. When HUD funds us, they look for the cash match, but they also look for a commitment from the county that are getting the funds. And that commitment is not only the cash match, but other housing programs in the community. North Central CAP does run 4 additional housing programs. They are rapid rehousing, homeless prevention, transitional housing, and emergency rent assistance. But the big one, the HUD funding one, is for permanent supportive housing, which houses people who are addicted to opioids, meth, alcohol, prescription drugs, as well as those who have mental health issues. The program allows the North Central CAP to keep these people housed for 2 years or longer. That means we pay the rent, the utilities, and we provide intensive case management, with the ultimate goal of permanent supportive housing to restore these people to productiveness in the community. So, you know, in 2017 through June of 2018, we had 2 schools contact our agency because they had students that they were concerned about. These students had parents who were addicted to meth. So we stepped in, we saw that they qualified for our programming, and we assisted them through June of 2018 with last year's dollars. And the children maintained wonderful grade point averages. They were successful. They were in sports. The parents did receive treatment, so it was a very good outcome. So we believe that keeping people housed and helping them with their basic needs and helping the opioid crisis maintains Marathon County's initiative of keeping the county the safest, most healthiest, and prosperous in the state. So with that, I said I'd be brief. If the funding's discontinued, most likely our permanent supportive housing program would also be discontinued. It is unlikely that we would be able to raise $30,000 in a local fundraising effort. And the reason is because homelessness is full of negative connotations. People look at homeless people as drunks, meth users, people who just aren't worth anything. And that's not the case. Most of the people who are homeless are actually working. They have issues, but with our agency and many other nonprofit agencies, we help these people work through these issues, and they become productive members of our community. And that's really what our agency stands for. So Yi handed out some information about our organization. We just wanted you to be aware of what we do for the community.
You want to introduce Steven?
Pardon me?
You want to introduce Steven? I don't think people know.
Oh, Yi, come up. He's on our board. He's a wonderful representative for our agency, and he's very knowledgeable about what we do. And I don't know if you want to add to anything that I had said. Wonderful. Thank you, Yi.
Good evening, everyone. So I've been on the board of the North Central Community Action Program for almost 3 years now, and I can tell you one thing about this organization is that they do great work. They really do help people in the community. As I was listening to, this is my first time being at a Marathon County board meeting and listening to the issues that you're dealing with. I see that a lot of times these issues like the opioid crisis, crime, all of these things, they originate, from people having a poor foundation, and the lack of a good foundation at home, that can be remedied if the entire community works together at it. You've got all these nonprofits who specifically help out with these issues. You've got religious institutions. You've got schools who are also dealing with this. This is an entire community that has to work on this together. And if you eliminate funding from these nonprofit organizations, there's a very good chance that you're going to eliminate some of the strengths that you have in the community, some of your support. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samantha Straley-Solin. I'm the Executive Coordinator for Partnership for Progressive Agriculture. You should have received a packet in the mail, which just included some information about all what PPA does and the agriculture's impact on our Marathon County communities. So feel free to reach out to me with any other questions that but I just would like to just talk for a brief couple minutes. PPA brings ag education to our community, which then allows our community not only to know where their food comes from, but also to know about a very large industry that greatly affects our county, which in turn supports our farmers, growers, producers, and agribusinesses, which also bring in over 11,000 jobs and $2.7 billion in economic activity. PPA has made great strides in the past and continuing throughout the years to become self-sustaining through our partner memberships, but right now we really truly rely on our county support as of right now. I just would like to say thank you for your support in the 2019 budget, but I ask you to reconsider your thoughts in the future about your support for all nonprofits in our county and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board in regards to anything on the budget? Anybody else? Okay, I will declare the public hearing closed on the 2019 budget, and we will move on to item number D, budget discussion by board members. Discussion by the board members regarding the proposed 2019 budget. Supervisor Robinson.
Mr. Chair, in light of the comments that we received from some of the organizations relative to the impact of budget cuts and others, and the fact that we can't bind future legislative bodies, like this body can't bind us in the future relative to the budget, I understand the rationale behind the discussion relative to the nonprofits, but I would encourage us, and I support the effort to evaluate those programs and set some objective criteria by which we go about funding those. I would suggest that we look at the concepts that we use in the priority-based budgeting concept and the quadrants as it mandated. We look at the language that we use when we created a joint venture agreement or criteria that we would look at when we enter into agreements with other counties and other entities in terms of our ability to meet our mission and vision. And finally, that I think we ought to look in and factor into the components of our strategic plan and how do these go about doing it. And Jeff has left, but I know that in the past, the Health and Human Services Committee spent a lot of time looking at the 211 system and recognized that without that call-in system, we would have to put additional clerical support at both social services and the health department to answer those 7,500 calls that they're getting. So there is the unintended consequences of those activities, and I think we need to objectively look at those and try to create some criteria by which we will make those decisions and put the organizations on notice that they're going to be subjected to additional scrutiny, that they will need to meet some things here. And then I think we also need to reach out to those organizations and encourage them to contact our legislators to communicate to them the impact that levy limits are having upon our ability to fund critical services, not only at the county level, but with our community partners that advance our county goals. So we can't do this alone, and it helps if we can get some support from others communicating to those legislators the importance of modifying levy limits, give us a little bit more breathing room so that we're not forced to make these very difficult decisions that hurt the community in the long run. So I'm not sure the format by which the Finance Committee action will be brought before us, but I would encourage us that as we move through this process in the next year, that we establish some criteria and a process by which we can effectively evaluate those programs.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Any other discussion or questions on the 2019 proposed budget? Supervisor Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the $3 million wheel fee, when you look at the
Vehicle registration fee, Mr. Schaefer.
Yes. What did I say, veal fee? I didn't call it a tax.
You were getting close.
No, but I won't. Here, when I look on page 23, we raised $3 million on a wheel fee, but the tax levy went from 7.7 million in 18 to 8 million in 19.
What page you looking at? 23?
I'm looking at page 23 under the highway 5-year comparison.
Okay, did you ask a question so far, or are you just setting me
Well,
up for a while?
what I'm saying is, we raised $3 million.
Yes.
Where is it? Because our levy went from 7.7 to 8. Where's the 3 million?
Okay, you're talking about the operating budget. Now, the highway operating budget went from 7.7 million, rounded off, in
Right.
2018 to 8,663,000 in 2019.
Correct.
But one of the things that you got to understand is part of that was reserves that we used last year, and that will not show up in tax levy because it was reserves. It was money out of the savings account that we spent that was one-time money, and it wouldn't show up in the $7.6 million tax levy portion.
I'm gonna show up here.
Okay, follow up. Okay.
Okay, but
that-
now you want to get to where the
$3
$3 million is. That
Right.
is on the CIP listing under the budget. When you look at your CIP projects, registration fee, the first line on the budget, bituminous resurfacing, total cost is $6,350,000. Of that, $3 million is coming from registration fee.
Okay,
Got it?
got it.
Can you do the budget now?
No, then I'm going to ask a question. It seems to me this time last year, it was kind of understood we were not going to look at that vehicle registration fee again for 5 years.
It was not sunsetted.
Correct, but was it not discussed that we were not going to look at it for 5 years? We're going to just keep it? Somebody on the highway committee?
Well, the way the ordinance went into effect, it does not sunset. It does not prohibit this board from ever discussing it or ever reviewing it, or the committee from ever reviewing it.
So here's my question.
Supervisor Robinson,
Mr. Schaefer, Supervisor Schaefer, it's the Infrastructure Committee, not the Highway Committee. You ought to know that as a past member, but because we didn't have donuts tonight, I understand the limited brain activity at this late at night. So we will be bringing in a report on how the vehicle registration fee is being used in our January meeting with an update on how that is, how those dollars come in and play into our overall highway department budget. And we spent a lot of time this last year working with some of the local media people and trying to provide them with the background information relative to historic trends and state transportation aid. And just to put things in perspective, we lost that $192,000 this year in general transportation aids. And last year, we finally got near where we were in 2010 and 2011 with our transportation aid. So our state aid for transportation has gone down significantly over the last 10 years and certainly has not kept pace in terms of real dollars, much less inflationary dollars. So we'll bring that in January and provide you with additional background.
okay, so follow up. Supervisor Schaefer, you had another question. I could see the wheels turning and the smoke coming out.
Oh, you put me in a spot now, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to mention on the nonprofits, our administrator mentioned that, we do not borrow to buy trucks like most counties do. But on all these nonprofits, nobody else does that, what we're doing. So if we want to say we're not going to borrow like all the other counties do, that's great because it keeps the cost down. Maybe we shouldn't, and I don't think we should fund any of these. Not over a 5-year thing, and I intend to make see the Corporation Council to make an amendment to it. But you look at StartRight, I've been against that for, 19 years, whatever it's been going on. They serve 1,252 people in a year for 1.7 million. That's a lot of money per person. And to the best of my knowledge, no one has ever been in front of this board and said, we know we saved 2 people from going to jail. We don't know what the outcome is. In 17 years or 18 years that we've had that, I think, and Brad, maybe you can, it's been a long time, I remember, so.
It's longer than that.
Okay, no one's ever come here and said, we saved 1 person, but yet we spend several $1 million year after year after year, so.
One thing, just a point of clarification, it's a mistake of fact to say that other counties don't fund a historical society or economic development or our domestic violence shelter. They do. Not all of them do, but I thought you said none of them do. That's not true.
I stand corrected.
Yep.
Then my next question is on the women's community. The budget shows 75,000 we're giving them,
Yes.
but the levy's only 55. Where's the 20,000 come from?
Marriage license?
And so we always have the
State-
same amount of people each year getting married?
It's a percentage
stay
of the
steady?
marriage license is,
We
it's
project that.
mandated by the state.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
One
questions?
thing, not on that topic, I hadn't anticipated when I put this message together, but I think that the chair is right that 25,000 of that is mandated. Well, if we cut this, we're still going to comply with the law. So we may still have to be transferring $25,000 to the women's community because that's what's required. It's an additional tax on marriage licenses.
But it's not coming out of our county levy, correct?
That's coming out of
Okay.
marriage licenses.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to follow up and agree to a point with Supervisor Robinson, is that I think we do need to have a serious benchmark study on the effectiveness of some of these programs, especially the Start Right. Is there, and maybe Mr. Carter can answer this, has there been a past study on this, on the effectiveness of Start Right and the county's contributions on that level?
They have done a pretty good job of reporting outcomes throughout the years. In fact, they've been leaders in that. The Board of Public Health has been monitoring that. So, you know, but the outcomes are more in the present that you can measure. You know, what Mr. Schaefer was talking about, well, somebody didn't go to jail. I'm not sure that's one of the outcomes, but school readiness and a number of other things are there. That really is the responsibility of the Board of Public Health, and they have done what they can with that. As I mentioned, the Health and Human Services Committee also reviewed that. But it's a $1.7 million investment. Should be reviewed every year. Every year to make sure that that's still an important investment that's being reutilized, because it's, you know, it's not like the jail. You're going to have a jail no matter what. But this, you may want to invest more or you may want to invest less. It should be something that's always reviewed.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, the program is 1.7, 500,000 of that is non-tax levy support. So the tax levy support of the program is 1.2.
Right. And just, I had one quick follow-up. Have we ever looked at contracted services for the highway department as opposed to our own department producing the bulk of that labor? Have we
Well, it
looked at that
depends on
kind of-
the definition of what, have we looked at it? I recall specific discussions about, could we utilize a lesser crew, reduce our summer workload, and then hire people for snow plowing in the winter? And that, because that's when our peak demand is. And the answer that I recall, and it's going back some 10 years, is no, and we're not going to look at that. But that was a different economic environment. So that might be a different answer now.
We just have, fortunately, we have the former board, one of the former board chairs here who was part of that discussion, but that's for another point. Supervisor Boots is next.
In regards to Start Right, and Mr. Schaefer's questions,
we've had them come in numerous times at the Health and Human Services Board meeting. And he is correct in the fact that the measurables are hard to find. How do you know what it does to a child that was 1 or 2 years old that is not measurable? I mean, there are some things they say, well, we think we've done well. In the presentations that we've heard, it has always been pretty much unanimous at the Health and Human Services side that this is a program we cannot afford to get rid of. So I would just like to say that, we're a standing committee type board where you listen to our standing committees and what they have to say. And it's been pretty overwhelming at everyone we've heard that this is a program that we do not want to get rid of.
Okay, Supervisor Krause.
Thank you, Chairman Gibbs. I'm on the Health and Human Services Committee too. And one of the important things that was mentioned about the importance of that program was that there are many young mothers today that do not know how to raise their children. They're at risk. They're not really trained, or they weren't trained by their mother as to how to raise an infant. Pregnancy care, things like that. And then you have the issue of the minorities, the Hmongs. There's the language barrier, which impacts how they take care of themselves during pregnancy and taking care of the infant afterwards. A nurse comes into the home, interviews the mother, looks at the child, and the nurse was telling of a situation where she went to look at the child, and the child was in respiratory distress and was dying. So she's had helped with saving that child's life because the mother did not know that this child had this respiratory issue and was not breathing properly. So if it hadn't been the nurse coming in to take a look and interview the mother and asking to look at the child, that child would have died. And I agree that it seems to be a very high cost, but when you have so many minorities and so many unprepared young mothers having children today, that their lives are at risk. They're at risk for neglect and abuse also. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Any other discussion on the 2019 budget? We have Supervisor Schaefer.
I want to ask this, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I want to ask this board, I'm looking at like 9 amendments. If we are truly going to look at 211, Crime Stoppers, the boot camp, if we are truly going to look at those, because we've talked about it year after year. Last year, I think we were going to have them come in once, each group or something. I think we had one group actually that may have made a presentation to the county board. If we are truly going to do it, I won't make any of those amendments because they're going to fail anyhow. We all know they're going to fail, but we've got to do something with it. And if we are truly going to do something about it next year, I'll forget my amendments. But it's the same thing. I've been here for like 20 plus years off and on, and I voted against the original Start Right, so I don't know when that was, Brad, but and I'm not saying it's a bad program, but we have to account for the dollars. And if this board is truly, and I really mean it, if we are really going to look at it next year, item by item, I won't waste everybody's time.
Well, I will take it on as a commitment from the board chair that the executive committee will come up with a proposed set of criteria and bring it to this board to discuss that criteria so that each of those programs can go through. That criteria that is set up and agreed to by this board in ranking those outside agencies and those and bring that back to this board to then rank those nonprofit fundings and then move forward.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, you can take the afternoon off tomorrow then.
As long as 37 others of you feel the same.
Supervisor Tremelling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do not feel any nonprofit organization we should fund, because I'll tell you one thing. If you're going to do that, then you should forget about the Marathon County Board. You don't have to even have it. It should not even be funded, period.
Okay, any other discussion? Any other discussion on the budget? So everybody has all the information, no additional information is going to be requested on Thursday for the budget. All right. Well, then we will move on to announcements. Again, just a reminder, if you do have a budget amendment, that we ask you to have a discussion. There's a copy of the blank form, but you need the actual budget line items that you're going to, because it has to be a balanced budget by state statute. You have to take, if you're going to move something out of a line item, it must be transferred into something else. If you're going to transfer something from some other department to a different department, if you have a discussion with either the Corp Counsel or the finance director, they can provide you those codes, and because we want this and do not want amendments coming to the board that are not balanced and do not account for the double entry that is required in accounting. That's my accounting speech for the night. So any other announcements and or requests? Any other announcements and or requests? Seeing none, motion by Supervisor Langenhan and second by Supervisor Opel to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.